Hello, my name is David Linton. Today I want to talk to you about energy reports. I've had a lot of people asking me about this. I've got a lot of messages in LinkedIn. So I figured it was just easier to record a video and explain how the reports work. And the key thing about the reports, we produce a weekly report. We produce the morning call every morning where we call the market for the day ahead. The weekly report, we're calling the market for the week ahead. And then we do some long-term analysis as well. I normally do this to help longer term buyers of gas and power and just thinking about the longer term. So this is more the people in the market that really want to know where we're going to be in a year or two's time. So we can do the long term, the very short term if you're trading gas and power, and then the weekly report just sets you up for the week. And the key thing to remember about the weekly report is this idea of time horizon. And I've talked about this many times, but it's unique to technical analysis in that if we change the time frame of the chart, we change the time frame of the analysis. And that's something that's very easy to forget, which is why on the daily reports, the morning call report, we're using 60-minute charts, what's just the backdrop for the next few days, and then the 1-minute chart with all the targets and trends for today, calling it today, and that's really using the 1-minute charts. So you can't really use 1-minute charts to call what's going to happen next month, and you can't use weekly charts to call what's going to happen today. It's really understanding that, but getting this time horizon is a really key aspect. So for our daily reports, we're using 1-minute charts and 60-minute charts, and then for our weekly report, we're using 60-minute charts and daily charts, and then for our monthly report, we're using daily and weekly charts. And having these two time frames just gives us a little bit more power in understanding the longer term trends that we're dealing with when we're looking at the shorter term. So the key thing to remember is about these reports is just how we do that. So on this weekly report, we literally go, we're looking at coming weeks by looking at a daily chart, and then we're looking at coming days by looking at a 60-minute chart. So that's how we operate on the weekly report. On the daily report, the morning call, we put this out at the market. This was out at 8:08 this morning. We ran the report, and here we're looking at much more shorter term charts. We're looking at the 60-minute chart and then the 1-minute chart. So these 1-minute targets, of course, are coming live on the charts every day, and there will be new targets. So here we've got emissions, and then we can just literally see the new targets, and there'll be more kicking in real time for those that are actually watching these markets in real time. So here we see TTF. There was an upside target just after I wrote this report this morning. There was an upside target given, and that's been since met. So it's really key in understanding these are the time frames of the reports. But now looking at the longer term, and this is something probably that a lot of energy traders are not doing so much, but those who are thinking on the longer term in the energy market, we now start to look at daily and weekly prices. And for this, I'm using model data from OTC Global Holdings. We've been collecting this curve data for over a year with OTC, and one of the great things about the curve data is behind every point on the curve is a contract. And so by collecting that data, we've effectively got the historical curves, which is why we can actually plot where the curves were previously and how they've changed. And that's a really valuable aspect in terms of making decisions. But that also means that we've got this daily modeled data, and we've got it on a lot of different markets that you wouldn't normally have any pricing data on. So and this pricing data is included in your Updata Enterprise package. So as an energy, if you're a buyer of energy or you're looking at the longer term energy market, this is really, really valuable data to have, and we include this as part of our package to enterprise users. So what I've got here is a weekly candlestick chart. I've got a daily cloud chart with the price targets here. I've got 1% of the price targets, that's 1% unit price. Here we've got 0.5%. These are shorter term targets on the daily. And of course, on those shorter term reports, we're using 60-minute and 1-minute to generate much shorter term targets. And then here we've got Bollinger Bands and a couple of relative charts, which I'll talk about as I go through the data, and then some key levels and momentum. So this just gives me a little bit of a view of what's going on in European energy. So here we see gas, that's TTF. If I look at MBP, and I can look at the relative here, so this is MBP relative to TTF, and that's quite interesting in that we see here that we've got gas MBP has underperformed TTF by 7% since the beginning of last year. So it's just a little thing there. Notice how this downside target was given way back in 2022 at 380 to 134. Very hard to believe then. Well, of course, that's ancient history. We've got a new downside target to 24 on MBP. So that's still quite a long way below where we are now. Now, whether we'll get that low, we've got a tussle going on here on the shorter term charts. And so this is the point. Can we get back above the cloud? And we're already seeing that tussle going on in the 60-minute charts. And that's what often happens. You'll see the shorter term charts changing first. This is German gas, NCG, Italian gas. All of this model data means we've got pricing for every single day. And that's really, really valuable in presenting these modeled charts where you've got smooth data based on the curve data. So it's really quite key. And we do say modeled data here, just to say this is not where prices have necessarily traded, but we have data all the same. So let's look at the power market. So German power, of course, is the big market. Interestingly, German power has outperformed over the last since the beginning of last year, where we're at 100, German power has outperformed Dutch gas monthly by nearly 40%. So it's really interesting that gas prices have fallen much more aggressively than power prices. And then if we look at UK power, again, we've got these downside targets. Really interesting here on the daily chart. We're still below the cloud, means we're bearish. These targets were given back at 120 to 70 and 62. We're now at 73. Very hard to believe last March, but that's where we are, which is why this is the longer term view of where markets are going. And I work with a lot of clients on this longer term where we go through the markets and we look at that. And it's really quite interesting. And in fact, what we can do here is we can look at versus German power. So we can go to French power, and we can see here we're 11% underperformance. Downside target's still there, but a tussle going on. Can we get back above the cloud? Notice how this target to given to 60. We nearly got there. So really quite key. And we just go through Nordic power, Dutch power. Now, these are markets that are pretty well covered, but what's interesting as you get further down the list, you start to get to some of the markets where there's less data available. Interesting there on Czech power, we're waiting for a downside target to be activated. That's orange. That will turn red when it's activated. No really big long-term downside targets, but we are still bearish below the cloud on that daily chart. Italian power, little upside target there. Spanish power, this has actually fallen away, having looked strong. New downside targets, waiting for one to be activated there. There's the range, much more of a range on Spanish power. Polish power, again, waiting for downside target to be activated. So markets are literally a little bit on a knife edge at the moment. Austria, Swiss power, again, this is all off the model data. Really quite interesting there, waiting for an upside target to be activated. Hungary, we see here downside target, and Romania. We're starting to get to some of the Eastern European markets. Bulgarian power, again, not many people have data on that. It's all in the Updata system. And then we're getting to Slovenia, Slovakia, Serbia, really quite interesting there. Again, this data comes with the Updata system, so you can actually look at this. And then Greek power, and again, watching for these targets. So really quite interesting. And of course, you can take these charts up to full screen at any time and just look at the price data. So the fact that we've got this downside target nearly met, we've got a new mini upside target, but we are below the cloud. So it's a little bit early to be bullish. But pretty much all the power markets are still looking like they've not really bottomed, and that's the really key thing. We're waiting for upside targets to show through on these charts and to get back above the clouds. So it just gives you a view of what's happening in the long term, but of course in the short term we're seeing all the thrills and spills that you see on those 1 minute and 60-minute charts. This is just a longer term view of what's going on in European energy markets. Where will we be in a year's time? That's the thing to think about, and these curves are giving us that data that allows us to just think about the future. And so the key thing is to look at that data, look at what the charts are telling you longer term, and it's very easy to get obsessed by the daily moves, but what we want to do is be able to put that into context of longer term charts. I hope that's been very helpful to you.